Good evening. Today is Tuesday, February 27, 2024. This is a regularly scheduled meeting of the Newburgh School Board. I'd like to, the audience is full. I welcome you. The whole board welcomes you. We love to see you here. The only way things succeed is if you participate. Mr. Bergarelli is going to lead us in the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please stand for a moment of silent reflection. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McCoy, roll call.
Mr. Bergarelli?
Here.
Mr. Doré?
Here.
Mr. Howard? Here. Mr. Levenstein?
Here.
Ms. Politi?
Here.
All right, good evening. I have a short statement I'd like to read, and it's really geared toward the community. One of the easiest things we can do, any of us can do, is to quit. We can quit our job, we can quit and walk away from relationships, we can quit a team, or we can quit institutions where we once served. Recently, there have been articles and video news stories in the local media regarding former Board of Education members who resigned their seats. And I'm going to use the word resigned lightly. At one point in the last 2 years, each of them pledged to uphold their positions on the board. They took a pledge. They were elected by you, the community, with a reasonable expectation that they perform their job as board members. So while resign sounds very formal and professional, the real act they performed was quitting, which by default makes them quitters. They quit the Board of Education, but their act was even more egregious, and this is what I'm upset about. They quit you, the community, that they took an oath to serve. And I think you deserve better. Some of these people have now resigned to what they do best: attack others through the mainstream local media along with social media. They are trying to make their act of quitting an act of righteousness. It is not. It's an act of cowardice. Sitting before you this evening are 5 board members, each duly elected by you. We didn't quit, we won't quit, and we won't quit on you. We love this community. I'm saying this because I'd like every member of the community to think about this when they read or see something from these former board members in the media or perhaps on social media. Ask yourself if you are giving credence to the opinions of a quitter. I can't answer that for you. The answer is up to you, but I ask that you consider the question. Effective tonight, the Board of Education is moving on and away from the distractions these former board members created over the last several months. Going forward, our focus will be 100% directed towards our students, our educators, our support staff, and our administrators. I'm asking you, the members of the community, to join us in this effort. Thank you. All right, moving on. Clerk of the Board, Mr. McCoy, item number 2.
I have one item, resolution to approve the appointment of board members.
Could I get a motion and a second?
Second.
Any discussion on this item? It appears none. Call the roll.
Mr. Doré?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Levenstein?
Yes.
Ms. Politi?
Yes.
Mr. Bergarelli?
Yes.
That item passes, and we would like to invite the new members of the board to come to the table, please. I'm now going to come around and swear in the newly appointed members of the board. Mr. Walker, will you please stand and raise your right hand?
That's going to take a little longer.
I do solemnly swear
I do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution
that I will support the Constitution
of the United States
of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and I will faithfully discharge the duties
and I will faithfully discharge the duties
of the office of Trustee of the Board of Education
of the office of Trustee of the Board of Education
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
Congratulations, sir.
Thank you so much.
Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I do solemnly swear
I do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and I will faithfully discharge the duties
and I will faithfully discharge the duty
of the office of Trustee of the Board of Education
as the Officer of Trustees of the Board of Education
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
Congratulations, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I do solemnly swear
I do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
and I will faithfully discharge the duties
of the office of Board of Education
of the Office of Board of Education
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
Congratulations, ma'am.
Thank you, sir.
Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I do solemnly swear
I do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
and I will faithfully discharge the duties
of the office of Trustee of the Board of Education
of the Office of Trustees and Board of Education
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
Congratulations, sir. That concludes my items, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. McCoy. We will move on to item 3. Mr. Forget, Deputy Superintendent.
Thank you, Mr. DeRay. This evening, we have our student government present. Each month, we hear from our student government who provide an update on what's happening at the high school from their perspective. This evening, we have 4 seniors representing their fellow students who will present to you. These students will be introduced by their senior class advisor, Ms. Linda Rooney.
Good evening, Board of Education and members of the community. I would like to introduce my student council members. I have my president, Daniela Marino. I have Gigi, Ayana, I'm drawing blanks here because I'm not prepared, and Alejandra. We have the president, the vice president, and student council members, and our treasurer. Ladies, the floor is yours.
Good evening. We are senior class representatives of the Student Council. My name is Daniela Moreno, and I am the senior class president and a senior at the North Campus. Here are some of the highlights from NFA from the last month. STEAM classes had an art gallery showing their final ceramic and glass projects. These projects had to relate to a real-world issue. Students chose issues like global warming, mental health, social media, and women's rights, to name a few. In addition, students had to write both an artistic and scientific statements to accompany their piece. STEAM class and Chem Club started the third quarter with a glow day where fluorescence and chemiluminescence were studied, and students participated in a team-building games in the glow room. The cast and crew of the NFA Spring Musical production are getting ready to present Hairspray on March 15th and 16th. Tickets go on sale mid-February. Alumni Keandre Broomfield, Seaweed J. Stubbs in the NFA's 2012 production, star of BET's Kingdom and Business of the National Tour, and Broadway cast of Hamilton, kicked off rehearsals for the current production by leading a mini acting workshop. In early January, the cast and crew participated in a panel discussion with alumni from NFA's 2012 production of Hairspray, many of whom are working in the performing arts. Alumni included Chloe Mallard, professional singer and former Carnival Cruise Line performer, as well as Alexandria Slater, Amanda Pearl, Malik Henry, James Lopez, Juliana Reyes, and Avery Pax, all of who continue to work or support the performing arts in some other way. Ms. Clifford and the alumni were able to talk about their experiences beyond Academy Field and pass on words of wisdom to the current cast and crew. It was a fun opportunity for the Goldbacks past and present to connect through their shared experience in the musical productions at NFA. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Alejandra Ramos, and I am the Senior Class Vice President and a senior at the main campus. Continuing the highlights, on January 11th, we had students from all performance groups come together for the NFA main selection tour night. We had members from all ensembles there promoting our groups and performing for all to see. Even Miss Valentino joined the Madrigals. We had our second winter concert on January 17th. We had EKE, Percussion Ensemble, Chamber Strings, Shawmine Chorus, treble bass choir, and jazz band performances for this concert. We had the following students listed below participate in the OCMEA High School All-County Music Festival on January 26th to 27th at Monroe Woodbury High School. These students auditioned back in October on high-level musical excerpts. Their scores were compared to other high school music students in the Orange County for acceptance into the mixed chorus, band, and orchestra. We had one student accepted into the OCMEA Vocal Jazz Ensemble, Julian Lamar. On February 4th, 9th grade students auditioned for the Junior High All-County. We are awaiting the results, but proud of all who auditioned. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Ayana Lynch, and I am the Senior Class Vice Treasurer and the senior at Main Campus. The Black History Club sponsored a cultural dress day. We will end Black History Month with an assembly on the main campus on February 29th. In addition, the mock trial team is preparing for their first competition on March 16th. The team has applied to take a field trip before the competition to the Newburgh City Court, where the team will act out their trial with Newburgh City Court Judge Anika Mohammed presiding. Judge Mohammed is our team's legal advisor. We have only 4 weeks before our first competition. In addition, every go back every day means so much when NFA alums come back to give back. Thank you so much to those who have spoken to our students about their college experience. They have also reflected on the experience they had at NFA West and how it prepared them for college and career opportunities. It was an awesome alum day. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Gigi Pollack, and I'm the senior class senator and a senior at the main campus. On February 9th, a recurring tradition at NFA West is to recognize staff and scholars for their growth and contribution to the school community. This year's mantra is Every Goldback Every Day, which represents embracing who we are as Goldbacks by going above and beyond to aim for success in and outside of the classroom. Scholars voted for the educators, and educators were voted for by the scholars. All Goldbacks were acknowledged at our Friday morning meeting together with their families and the entire school community. On February 2nd and 3rd, members of the NFA debate team competed at the Pennsbury Falcon Invitational Debate Competition. This event was held at Pennsbury East High School in Fairless Hills, Pennsylvania. NFA Debate won multiple round victories as they competed against the schools from across the Northeast. These debate students also had the great opportunity to visit the famous Independence Hall in the Liberty Bell in Philadelphia. Prior to the debate competition, members of NFA Debate who competed in this prestigious event were Anakin Landolfa, Quinn Fairbanks, Roman DeAlfonso, and Tina Wang. Great job by all participants of the debate team. Key Club hosted a book drive to donate to local youth shelters. They were able to donate a few hundred books this year. The NFA Colonnade is proud to announce that two main campus seniors, Chiara Graziano and Sophia Mucci, will be competing in the Hudson Valley Regional Level of Poetry Out Loud at SUNY New Paltz on February 27th. Poetry Out Loud is an annual poetry recitation competition sponsored by the National Endowment for the Arts and the Poetry Foundation. The Regional Poetry Out Loud competition is the second of several steps toward possibly competing at the state or even national levels. Best of luck, Kiara and Sophia. Thank you, and here is a video to showcase some of the material we just shared.
Dr. Sklarz, we're going to take a photo. Great. Thank you very much. Next, we are proud to have with us students from our Certified Nursing Assistant Program and our ROTC programs at NFA North Campus who displayed heroic efforts in our community. This evening, we welcome their principal, Mr. Dotto, who is going to share their story.
Good evening, everyone. Mr. President, Mr. Forget, cabinet members, members of the Board of Education, it is an absolute honor for me to present the following NFA North students this evening for their exemplary and heroic behavior and actions. On December 15th, prior to general dismissal of school, NFA North students who had completed their school day were across the street on Marne Avenue. A community member approached students and expressed that they were experiencing a personal medical emergency. The students responded and assisted, and ultimately having to perform CPR, calling 911, and other students returning to the school to get our nursing staff to assist in this critical medical situation. The students and staff continue to aid this community member in need while waiting for EMS and first responders to report to the scene. Our students recognized this evening used their skills learned in the classroom and fieldwork and their leadership skills to help support a community member. These students exemplify the Go Back standard every day. The selflessness they exhibited is truly what defines a Go Back and a member of the NECSD community. Elizabeth, Christopher, Ariana, Ian, Sahir, and Michael stepped up to help another human being. We truly appreciate the care that our students and staff expressed for this individual in need. It was difficult to decide whether to recognize any of the students or staff members without exploiting the situation. However, we felt it important to acknowledge the students who are members of this community who cared and supported another human being in need. In the end, isn't this what we hope that we all do for each other? Sorry, I'm a little emotional about it because we were there when all this happened, so it was a very emotional time. Obviously, on the FERPA laws and things like that, we can't get any further. But right now, it's really important that we recognize our students. I'm going to ask Sergeant Granda and Linda Romano to help me give out certificates. It's more than a certificate. I think you know that by now. So let's start with, if you guys can help me, Ms. Romano. All right, Elizabeth. Come on up, Elizabeth. Just make sure they're in order. They're in order. They should be in order. Open it. No, here. Here. Yeah, this way. Christopher. Okay. And Coach Burks, too. I'm sorry, Coach. Yeah, help us out. Yeah. Ariana, come up. Ian? Sair? And Michael. So, just a last word on this. I'm sorry I got a little emotional, but it was a very difficult time for our students that day. It was a very difficult time for our staff. However, as you can see, we have amazing students who not only applied what they learned, but just being amazing human beings. So thank you so much for allowing us to share that story.
And finally this evening, we have Tyson Hill from our NFA West campus who will be sharing a presentation in honor of Black History Month.
There we go. There we go. I believe we can go back a slide. Oh, I got it. I apologize. Did I turn it on? All right. Good evening. My name is Tyson Hill. I'm a senior at NFA West. I'm a MBK fellow. And I'm an MBK fellow, and I'm part of Black History Club. A little about me. I make sure that advocacy is the #1 priority. We have to understand that if we look at the panels in front of me today, diversity is king. With diversity, we understand new experiences, new outcomes. And that's what I'm here today to show you about how Black History Club and Black history is monumental. So the origins. In 1926, almost 100 years ago, Carter G. Woodson sought out and found a way to make sure Black history and Black culture did not go to waste. Made sure that Black history and Black culture was supported on all sides of the train. 50 years later, 1976, that week that Carter G. Woodson created in order to dedicate for Black history and Black culture was turned into a month, as we know as today, Black History Month. Black history is around us. Looking at the tables in front of me, this is Black history. We have our newly elected board members. We have the first Black woman superintendent. We have all these principles. It's making history. History happens every day. Understanding that teachers, principals, board members, and superintendents all plays a role in every student's life. Understanding that moving forward into March, April, Black history is history. It won't go away. But for 1 month, we're able to sit here and talk about it. Not just slavery, not just all the trials and tribulations, but let's talk about all the success. Let's talk about all of the times that we came together and pushed forward through all those trials and tribulations. That's what I want to learn about. So, there's this one important thing that I just want to share today. Black history is to demonstrate how once in America we were told we couldn't have a future. But look around. I'm going to say it again. Look around. I'm going to share this quote by Alice Walker. The most common way people give up their power is by thinking they don't have any. Make sure power and authority is used correctly. Making sure that you understand that your voice has meaning, that you have meaning. You have the power only if you apply it. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you very much. Our next resolution is a resolution to approve the revised 23-24 district calendar. This change is due to voting that will be taking place within our schools.
Can I get a motion and a second on this resolution?
Second.
Any discussion on this item? Please call the roll.
Mr. Doré?
Yes.
Mr. Grant? Mr. Harvey? Mr. Howard? Mr. Levinstein?
Yes.
Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Ms. Politi? Mr. Walker? Mr. Bergarelli?
Yes. That concludes my items. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Forget. Item 4, Board President items. I have for consideration tonight items 4.1 to 4.3. Would anybody like to separate any of these items out? Could I get a motion and a second then?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on these items? Please call the roll.
Mr. Grant? Mr. Harvey?
Yes.
Mr. Howard? Mr. Levinstein?
Yes.
Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Ms. Politi? Mr. Walker? Mr. Bergarelli?
Yes.
Mr. Doré?
Yes. We will be moving into executive session. Be it resolved that the Board of Education hereby recesses into executive session for the following purpose: employment history of certain pediological employees or corporations and the matters leading to the employment of particular individuals, collective bargaining under the Taylor Law, and to obtain advice from legal counsel. Get a motion in a second?
So moved. Second.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Harvey?
Yes.
Mr. Howard? Mr. Levinstein? Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Ms. Politi?
Yes.
Mr. Walker? Mr. Bergarelli?
Yes.
Mr. Doré?
Yes.
Mr. Grant?
Yes.
Thank you. We will return 30 to 45 minutes. But if anybody would like to speak, okay, we'll move on to non-agenda items, and we have 3 people signed up.
The first person is Mr. Paul Anderson.
Okay.
Thank you for letting me speak tonight, ladies and gentlemen. Hello, everyone. My name is Paul Anderson, a town of Newburgh resident, lifelong Newburgh, New Windsor resident, also an NFA graduate of 1985. I want to get right to the point. My very good friend of mine, Carmela Perino, and I have both, noticed that both flagpoles up to NFA have no flags on them. Why is that? There's one in the back that has the flag on it, and this has been going on for almost 3.5, 4 weeks. That's unacceptable. There's a beautiful flag there. How about our high school? Don't you think that our kids would like to see the flag flying at our high school? Now, I know none of you can answer me back, but we should all want to have the flags flying up to NFA. Just wondering, is there an agenda, behind that? I've asked some questions, so has my buddy. I asked some people up to the high school, and they told me, more or less, don't ask. That's very disturbing as a resident and a taxpayer of Orange County and for the schools. But yet, I can go around to other schools and see the beautiful flags flying. Last week, as we all know, was President's Week. Of all weeks, no flags were flying except the one in the back by the football field. So me as a, just a normal taxpayer, God-loving American, would love to see my flag. Every morning I wake up, I got the flag on my arm, but that's my decision. Why can't the community see the flag up there? It just doesn't make sense. I hope I hope both of those flags will be up sometime soon, tomorrow, or maybe in the very near future. Because if not, social media is very big. All I have to do is go up there and take a couple videos, post that online to social media, it's going to blow up like that. Now, I don't want a result to go and doing that, because just like you guys were talking about earlier about some other people that were here that went to social media, I don't want to go that route. But I'm sure a lot of people here own houses, and you guys are all taxpayers. Wouldn't you want to know why that is not up? Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your time. It's greatly appreciated.
Carsmello Perino. Sorry.
How you doing, everybody? This is my friend. I'm just reinforcing what he's saying. I've been back in town for like a month now, over a month. And that was the first thing I noticed. I was like, there's no flag on the flagpole on both sides, the one by the planetarium and the one on South Street. And as a member of the community, like, you guys might not, think of it, but it's something that people kind of look up to. And, it's kind of strange, like, not to see it for over a month. I could see like a day, a week, it got rained, but I could see even the half staff upside down, but there's been no flag flying up there for well over a month now, and I have it documented. I just thought it was strange. Hopefully it gets resolved. I don't think it's, I know you guys got bigger fish to fry, but little things like that, members of the community kind of like look up to. You get some pride from your community when you see, no litter and, little organization stuff at the high school. So thank you for your time. Hopefully you guys have a great day tomorrow.
Mr. Robert McLemore.
Thank you for this time. I wanted to give accolades and honor because I believe that we are teaching our children and generations morals and values that will shape and mold them for their future. I was at the Black, Hispanic, Puerto Rican, and Asian caucus about 2 weeks ago, and I ran into Mr. Phil Howard, who was with a host of students from my brother's keepers. And I was surprised and happy at the same time to see someone with our students that care that much to expose them to a world that may not be, they may have dreamed of, but never could obtain. And so I'm just giving honor to him because I thought it was important that he understands that sometimes things go unnoticed and acknowledgement goes unnoticed, but we see your efforts, and we thank you for what you're doing for our children. We thank you for mentoring our children. We thank you for teaching our children. We thank you for reaching our children, and keep doing the great work that you are doing, because everyone in that caucus seen what you did. And so I thought it would be befitting that we recognize and also acknowledge the great efforts that you are doing for our children and for their future. Thank you.
Before we move on, I have one comment. We are not allowed to answer people that speak. That's the forum we have. But I can assure you, we are listening. We don't have to talk back, but we are listening. All right? Thank you. Have a good evening. All right. Next is Superintendent, Mr. Forget, Deputy Superintendent, on items 8.1 and 8.2.
Thank you, Mr. DeRay. So, good evening, Goldback Nation. Welcome to the February 27th meeting of our Board of Education. I ask that you keep Dr. Manning Campbell and her family in your thoughts as they process the loss of her grandmother. On behalf of Dr. Manning Campbell and speaking for our executive team, we welcome the new members of the Board of Education to this table. For whatever reason, we have been provided with an opportunity for a mid-year restart of the leadership team of our school district. We look forward to developing a trusting and collaborative relationship between the Board of Education, the executive team, and hopefully that will transcend into our entire community. Our team has been working diligently to prepare for an amazing extended year school program to be offered this summer. Leadership has been meeting and developing programs that will suit the diverse needs of our entire student population. Our exceptional learner staff has kicked off the annual review process in order to be sure our students are provided with the most appropriate programs to meet their needs. The curriculum and instruction team is gearing up for the grade 3 through 8 New York State Assessment Administration. We are optimistic that our students will make us all proud. Attendance continues to be an area of focus for our Chief Information Officer. She has been working closely with our Director of Registration and Special Projects to monitor attendance rates and explore attendance improvement interventions with school-based staff. We are progressing nicely with the policy review process in the district. As you are aware, we have initiated a comprehensive analysis of all policies with the support of the New York State School Boards Association. A special thanks to Mr. Howard for his leadership and guidance as the BOE policy chair. We have completed the review of the zeros and have moved on to the 1,000 policies, and we will be bringing those changes forward at the policy committee in March. On March 5th, we will be presenting the 2023-2024 school accountability status of the district. We will also share our plans to resurrect the School Transformation Office. We look forward to greater attention and support being provided to our highest need schools in the very near future. And finally, please join me in thanking Dr. Kate Farrell for her dedication to the Goldback community. Dr. Farrell has decided to return to retirement and plans to spend quality time with her family and her friends. We are grateful for all the support she has provided over the many years of dedication to our district. You will now be provided with an update on the budget development for 2024-2025. We are currently assessing programs, resources, and staffing to best inform our program for next year. I will turn this over to Ms. Roaring.
Good evening. This is our first budget update for the 24-25 school year that we have begun planning for. And you're going to get another one next week, so we're going to be moving very quickly through this process as we begin to get up to speed. This evening, we're going to look at the district's restricted reserves, our tax cap levy history, also our preliminary tax cap calculation, which has to be filed by this Friday with the State Comptroller's Office, what the process is we're going through to develop next year's budget, the superintendent's budget priorities that we're keeping at front of mind as we're making those decisions to make a recommended budget, looking at the initial revenue projection, which is predicated upon the governor's proposal, expense drivers and mandated expenses that we have to include in our budget, and also looking at that initial expense projection so we have our starting point. We reviewed last year with you as well the restricted reserves and fund balance and what those things can be used for. Per the New York State Comptroller's Office, it is prudent for us to have restricted reserves and unrestricted fund balance that we save to mitigate the financial impact of major non-recurring and unforeseen expenditures that may arise. We also need to save for any capital acquisitions or other contingencies. Most restricted reserve funds are to provide resources for an intended future use and are prescriptive. This chart reflects the restricted reserves that the district has established over the years and what items can be used as we look at one-time revenue sources for our operating budget. Those are highlighted in green, and those that are not highlighted in green may not be used as part of our one-time revenue as we look at our budget for next year. This chart shows those items that we can consider as one-time revenue, and it also looks at some planned use. So what would we consider now for next year 24-25, 25-26, and 26-27. We start with the current balance in that reserve and then some planned use or consideration as we move forward. Looking at our tax levy history over the last 9 years, the district has had a flat tax levy. So we'll have some conversation with the board this year about whether or not you want to continue that trend. Our draft tax cap calculation for next year, we are looking at a couple of different items than we have in the past. So as we come down that first block of items, you'll see towards the bottom that we actually have available carryover from the current fiscal year that we can apply to next year's tax cap. That determination is made by the State Comptroller's Office. That is nothing we influence. That leaves us with a starting point of around $111 million. There are also 2 exclusions for next year. The first is the capital tax levy exclusion, and the second is the employees' retirement system exclusion, and I'll explain those a little bit more as we go forward. You'll see at the bottom, we do have the opportunity, if the board so chooses, to increase our tax levy by $5.27 million without requiring a supermajority. So when we look at some of the key factors in the calculation, it considers the tax base growth factor for our district area, which is 1.13%. The allowable levy growth factor was capped at 2% this year because it's either 2% or inflation, and 2% was less. We do have slightly more anticipated in pilots, which are payment in lieu of taxes next year, which is also a factor in this calculation. Again, the available carryover is something that's determined by the State Comptroller's Office, and that was approximately $716,000. And then the exemptions. The capital tax levy exclusion is a calculation, and that is based on what the district's debt service expense is for next fiscal year minus the building aid we anticipate receiving. And whatever that difference is, that is considered an exclusion in the tax cap calculation. The second one next year is one that comes along every so often, and our local employees' retirement system employer contribution rate next year is expected to increase by more than 2%. And when that happens, it triggers this exclusion. So we have a calculation of just under $33,000 as a potential exclusion as well in this calculation. When we're looking at how we're developing the budget for next fiscal year, we started with some of the same processes we used last year. So we continued to look at building allocations based on a per student amount using our bed stay enrollment for each building. The principals and directors once again had the opportunity to submit additional funding requests and minor maintenance requests for next year. These have been reviewed by the executive cabinet, and we have provided feedback to all the building principals on those requests at this time. We are looking at establishing staffing ratios, which has begun, and that will inform our staffing needs as we review staff. We have reviewed all of our grant-funded positions, and we're continuing to look at those positions as we move forward through budget development. We've identified those that will remain, and we also have identified some that were in our one-time funding that we would like to try and keep if we can find a way to do that. We've also prepared our initial expense and revenue projection that the board will receive tonight. The superintendent's budget priorities as we look at next year include literacy for all of our scholars, supports for our English language learners, and our exceptional learners program to make sure all our students have the opportunity to be successful. We're continuing our theme again this year in terms of looking at equity in our budget and how we allocate our resources. This starts with the building allocations being based on a calculation. We're also reviewing the resources that are available for our ELL students and district programs for special education to make sure we're meeting the needs of all of our students and allocating resources where they're most needed. We're looking at data-driven staffing, and we're looking specifically at our AIS staff and how we're utilizing those resources to support our students. Establishing student and staff ratios not just for faculty, but also for support staff and administration. For next year, at this time, there are some revenue adjustments. When we built the budget for fiscal year 24, we noted to the board that we were in the third and final year of the governor's promise to fully fund foundation aid. And we indicated at that time that we anticipated that would be the last significant increase we saw in foundation aid year over year. And it has been. Governor Hochul has proposed a much more modest increase in foundation aid. She's also proposed a change in the language of how foundation aid would be calculated going forward, which would continue to have a lower year-over-year increase. We do have some increases in our state categorical aid, which is largely based on our expenses, so we're looking at those very closely to make sure that those assumptions are correct. And we are proposing at this time an increase in the use of one-time funds, which is particularly attributed to our restricted reserves and appropriated fund balance. When we look at our initial revenue projection here in a graph form chart, you can see that the largest share of our revenue comes from the state at over $224 million. At this time, we have about $117.4 million projected for local. That includes a flat tax levy. We have about $270,000 that comes to us through federal funds, and that is Medicaid reimbursement. And then the $6.4 million reflects the use of appropriated one-time funds. This chart shows the various sources of revenue and the changes that we are anticipating at this time. You'll see that there's a significant increase in our interest earnings. We've been very fortunate with the decisions made by the Federal Reserve. We are seeing a significant increase in our interest earnings this year, and we are anticipating that will continue into next year. We have some significant decreases as well, particularly around our refund from BOCES for prior years. That has gone down significantly, and we want to make sure that we are not overstating what we anticipate that will be. You'll see a very modest increase here for general foundation aid, which is just over $2.4 million. And then as we go down from there, you'll see some specific categories of aid, particularly around excess cost, BOCES special services and transportation, where we're seeing some notable increases in aid anticipated at this time. It takes us to a year-over-year increase of $13.96 million in revenue. So looking at it categorically, this shows us that we have about 64% of our revenue in state aid. So that is a huge factor to us as we look at not just fiscal 25, but as we start looking at planning for future years. Our local revenue is just under 34%, and then we have appropriated one time of just under 2%. The biggest expense drivers for us is our human capital. It's our faculty, staff, and administrators that work with our students and support those efforts each day. Then followed by our employee benefits, which includes our health insurance and retirement system contributions for those individuals. We also have a fairly significant expense associated with our student transportation. And there's some things that we do that are transportation services above and beyond what the state requires us to do. And those statements are reflected here, where those variances are. The state requires us to do out of district up to 15 miles, and we currently do that up to 18 miles. We also have out-of-district tuition for foster students, our exceptional learners, and for charter school attendees. And lastly, it's debt service, which is attributable to completed construction and construction in process. Some of the mandated expenses, this was something we shared last year, and you'll see that they look very similar. It is tuition. It's providing special education and ELL services. It's making sure we have proper insurances in place. Transportation of our students, contractually salary increases for our staff, benefits, and most importantly, some of those instructional materials our students need in the classroom each day. When we look at our initial budget projection for next year at this time, we have put it into some of those larger expense categories, and compensation is expected to be about $165.5 million. This does reflect the contract settlements that the board approved in December for the NTA and in January for the CSEA. Our employee benefits is estimated to be $113 million, so you'll see it's a very close second in our categories, followed by transportation, out-of-district tuition, debt service, bringing us to a total of $365.87 million. At this time, that means we have a budget gap because we are expecting our expenditures based on assumptions at this time to be in excess of what we are assuming revenue to be based on the governor's proposed budget and where we stand with a flat tax levy and use of one-time funds. That will continue to be reviewed as we move through the budget development process to see if there's opportunities to enhance the revenue, just as we're looking at ways that we can more efficiently deliver some of the services our student needs to decrease the expenditure. I want to note that this expense projection does include the continuation of 26 positions that were in the one-time ARP ESSER funds. So as we look at our next steps, we're going to continue to review staffing needs. We're going to be meeting with each of the building principals in the next week or so to review their scheduling for next year so that we can start to wrap our hands around staffing. We also have retirement notifications that are expected to come in by this Friday, so we'll start to look at those as well. The tax cap will be filed by Friday, which is when it's due. We'll continue to look at revenue and monitor any legislative budget action. The next step would be one House bills out of the Senate or Assembly, and that really is the best next indicator of whether or not we will anticipate any increase in state aid for next year. Continue to look at our expenditures. We're reviewing our BOE service request, and we're going to be providing an update to the board next Tuesday.
Thank you, Ms. Roaring. Members, any questions?
Thank you. I have 3 questions. I'll start with the first one. You talked about the building allocations. This is the second year it's being done. How effective was it? And can you tell us a little bit, not the buildings that have used their money, but are they using their money appropriately and fully?
So we deviated a little bit on the administration of the allocation after the budget was adopted last year at the request of the administrator. So it's a collaboration between the building principals and the C&I department. I am involved in reviewing some of those purchases with the purchasing agent, so I do know that they are using their funds, and they are using them on some of the things we would expect them to be using them on. We have imposed our spending cutoff for this year, so we're expecting them to finalize those requests for purchase in the next couple of days. That includes their planning for their end-of-year celebrations and all the fun things they're looking forward to, as well as making sure we have things in place for testing. I think in terms of equity, it definitely has had the intended impact that we wanted it to have, because we're making sure that the funds available is not an arbitrary amount, but it is actually driven by a formula, so everybody has reasonable access to the same things to support the students in their building.
Thank you. You talked about employee retirement system going up. How about the teacher retirement? Do you know how that's going up for next year?
The teacher retirement is actually fairly flat between years, so that's why that exclusion did not come into place. We've seen a lot more volatility with the local employers' retirement rate than we have with the teacher's retirement.
And I'm not sure the next question should go to you or maybe to Mr. Forget. Enrollment trend. Are we trending the way that the projections looked at us many, many years ago, saying that we were going down? What are our enrollment trends?
So I will ask Ms. Peterson to give you the specifics, but I can tell you that that trend has been reversed a little bit. The original enrollment trend, based on the study that was done, was that we would be trending down. And I think it was by 2025 we would be at 10,000 or even a little bit lower. We are way off from that. We're above 11,000 and it's 2024. I don't know the specifics, but I believe the pandemic had something to do with it. But for the exact numbers, I'll turn this over to Ms. Peterson.
So in terms of enrollment, we're seeing certain increases, especially in our AL population. I think what the pandemic did, it allowed a lot of families to double up. We're seeing an increase in our homeless population within the community. And we have been seeing increases in our pre-K programs and different things like that. So we monitor it weekly. I actually was like, okay, let me get my scorecard up to see where we are. But we do monitor it closely. We monitor building class sizes, and placement. So registration has really been working hard on making sure that our populations are spread equally across our elementaries and middle, and we monitor that because we know that has an impact on staffing, resources, and all those different types of materials.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Mr. Levinstein.
Thank you. So, Ms. Roaring, I guess the figure that we concentrate on now is $16+ million. That is the gap between what is the initial projected revenues and expenses. Do we have an expectation that the state will either increase allocations or even have a budget on time to help us with that? Number one. And also, are there other areas that may be looked into for either revenue increasing or being able to lower some expenses without affecting the children of the district?
So I'm going to start with the revenue questions because I think they're kind of coming as a package there. I would say it's too early for us to have any indicators as to whether or not they're going to miss the budget deadline. So at this time, we're assuming that they will make it. It is an election year, so sometimes that means the legislature wants to provide a little additional funding above and beyond what the governor has proposed. But over the last couple of years, that hasn't been true. So we're looking very closely. It's going to be the one House bills that they release that tell us whether or not there's going to be any increase in state aid. Those usually come out middle to late March as they're finalizing the budget. In terms of other revenue opportunities, it really is going to be a conversation with the board around the tax levy and also looking at how we use our one-time funds.
Thank you.
Board members, anybody else? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Roaring, and thank you, Mr. DeRay. That concludes my items.
Okay, moving on. Item 9, Clerk of the Board, Mr. McCoy.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have 3 items for consideration tonight: the approval of the minutes from January 24th, the minutes from February 6th, and the budget election calendar.
Would anybody like to separate any of these items? Can I get a motion and a second?
Second.
Call the vote.
Mr. Howard? Yes. Mr. Levinstein?
Yes.
Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Ms. Politi?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Bergarelli?
Yes.
Mr. Doré?
Yes.
Mr. Grant?
Yes.
Mr. Harvey?
Yes.
Now with the adoption of 9.3, the budget election calendar, the candidate packets are available at the clerk's office if you're interested in running for the board. There is 6 seats on the board that will happen at the May 21st election. With the vacancies that we have on the board, there will be people seated on the board the day after the election when the vote is certified. If you're interested in running for the board, please contact me, and I will get you a packet to run for the board. That concludes my items, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. McCoy. Next, item 10, Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources. Good evening, Mr. McLemore.
Thank you, Mr. President. On the Human Resources agenda, I have items 10.1 through 10.23 for your consideration on tonight.
Would anyone like to separate any of these items?
I'd like to separate out item 10.22.
10.2? 10.22, okay. Anyone else? Okay, could I get a motion on 10.1 to 10.23 minus 10.22?
So moved.
Second.
Call the vote.
Mr. Levinstein?
I'm sorry? Oh, discussion. I apologize.
Thank you. So the Personnel Committee did not meet to vet the resolutions being brought forward tonight on the Human Resources agenda. So for clarity for myself and others, I would like to ask administration if I have the correct interpretation of the resolutions coming up for a vote. Regular appointments, leave of absences, resignations, and rescissions. Rescind a contract in lieu of probation for an administrator. Negotiated supplemental memorandum of agreement. Stipend for work previously done by directors of science and social studies. Negotiated supplemental memorandums of agreement for extended school year principals. Approve an acting treasurer. Approve a new district treasurer. Approve appointments or additional appointments from multiple funding sources for the following: staff in all buildings to inventory all books. Add to the critical incident stress management team, restorative practice planning committee, multi-tiered system of support planning committee, her time to play spring session, the Hope Project spring session, revised curriculum maps and assessments to align with standards in world language, elementary after-school programs, Schedule J appointments, spring coaches, Gear Up appointments, curriculum writing in computer science and digital fluency, Friday night lights after-school program, salary adjustments for confidential and managerial principal typists, tenure recommendations, request to rescind the retirement, and create a new .8 speech therapist position to fill the needs of 3 schools. Mr. McLemore, or administration, does this accurately describe the resolutions being presented?
Yes, sir, it does. But I think you mentioned something about the treasurer twice.
It looks like we're appointing an acting treasurer and approving a new district treasurer?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
My hearing. I'm sorry.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Mr. Levinstein.
Yes.
Ms. Mineo.
Yes.
Ms. Politi.
Yes.
Mr. Walker.
Yes.
Mr. Bergarelli.
Yes.
Mr. Doré.
Yes.
Mr. Grant.
Yes.
Mr. Harvey.
Yes.
Mr. Howard.
Yes.
Thank you.
Item 10.22.
Oh, okay. Entertain a motion on 10.22, please.
So moved. Second.
Discussion on this item?
I just have a problem with rescinding this recommendation, so this retirement. So I will vote accordingly.
Okay. Any other comments? Call the roll.
Ms. Mineo.
No.
Ms. Politi.
Yes.
Mr. Walker.
Yes.
Mr. Bergarelli.
Yes.
Mr. Doré.
Yes.
Mr. Grant.
Yes.
Mr. Harvey.
Yes.
Mr. Howard.
Yes.
Mr. Levinstein.
Yes.
Mr. President, I would like to request permission to add an item.
Okay.
Be it resolved that the Board of Education hereby accepts the resignation of the Assistant Superintendent, Curriculum and Instruction, Dr. Kathleen Farrell, effective February 26, 2024.
Could I get a motion and a second to add the item?
So moved.
Any discussion on this item?
I'd like to thank Dr. Farrell for everything that she's done for us. She's really done a lot to help us with the secondary curriculum and instruction. So thank you, Dr. Farrell.
Thank you. Mr. Howard?
Yeah, she stole my thunder. Now, I would just like to take this opportunity, Dr. Farrell, for all she has done for this district, all she has done for the scholars in our district, and wish her well in her future endeavors. Thank you.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Ms. Politi.
Yes.
Mr. Walker.
Yes.
Mr. Bergarelli.
Yes.
Mr. Doré.
Yes.
Mr. Grant.
Yes.
Mr. Harvey.
Yes.
Mr. Howard.
Yes.
Mr. Levinstein.
Yes.
Ms. Mineo.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. President. That concludes my items.
Point of order. We now
Sorry.
need to vote on that.
I'm
We
sorry.
just added it.
Could I get a motion and a second to vote on
So
the
moved.
resolution? Second. Thank you. Any discussion? Call the roll.
Mr. Walker.
Yes.
Mr. Bergarelli.
Yes.
Mr. Doré.
Yes.
Mr. Grant.
Yes.
Mr. Harvey.
Yes.
Mr. Howard.
Yes.
Mr. Levinstein.
With regret, yes.
Ms. Mineo.
Yes.
Ms. Politi.
Yes.
Now, thank you, Mr. President. That concludes
Thank you.
my items.
Next up, Assistant Superintendent of Finance. Good evening, Ms. Roaring.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Finance Division presents items 11.1 to 11.13 this evening for routine consent.
Thank you. Would anybody like to separate any of these items? Discussion on any of these items? Mr. Levinstein.
Point of order. You need a motion and a second first before
Okay.
discussion.
Excuse me. Motion and a second.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on these items? Mr. Levinstein.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I do have a question on item 11.2, the January claims audit summary report. And what it was marked was that 17 items would exceed PO or contract amounts. So I would like to ask, did we pay those additional costs? the severity of those additional costs, and do we have any safeguards put in place so this doesn't happen again?
So if I may, that question was submitted to the claims auditor, who would have to be the one that answers that question, and she has provided a written response if you'd like me to provide that at this time, or I can send it to you by email.
Well, I'm fine with the written responses. I think that's what the district wants to do. Yes, I'm okay with that. If that
Okay. I will share that response with you.
you will, I'm sorry?
You said a written response? I can forward that to you.
No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I meant you can respond here.
Okay. So she said that there are no additional costs associated with the 17 invoices, and that the safeguard procedures in place are as follows. If the amount of the budget line for any invoice is not enough to cover the cost of the invoice, our financial software will not allow her to approve it. The checks are then disapproved by me and returned to the AP clerks to request that monies be transferred by the purchasing agent or budget manager to allow that invoice to be approved for payment. Once the transfer is complete, the PO is returned to the claims auditor, at which time the invoice is reviewed again and approved for payment. Using the two-step audit process eliminates checks not being paid in a timely manner. That was one of the changes that we made last year with our internal claims auditor, was to do that two-step process.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions on these items? Call the vote.
Mr. Bergarelli?
Yes.
Mr. Doré?
Yes.
Mr. Grant?
Yes.
Mr. Harvey?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Levenstein?
Yes.
Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Ms. Politi?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. President. That concludes my items.
Item number 12, Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction, Elementary. Good evening, Ms. Moriarty.
Thank you, Mr. President. Elementary Curriculum Instruction presents items 12.1 through 12.3 as a consent agenda.
Does anybody need to separate any of these items? Could I get a motion and a second for the items?
So moved.
Second. Any discussion? Don't see any. Call the vote.
Mr. Doré?
Yes.
Mr. Grant?
Yes.
Mr. Harvey?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Levenstein?
Yes.
Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Ms. Politi?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Bergarelli?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. President. That concludes my items.
Thank you. Item number 13. Good evening, Dr. Mack.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. President. For secondary curriculum and instruction, we have items 13.1 through 13.3, please.
Would anybody like to separate any of these items out? Could I get a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on these items? Call the vote.
Mr. Grant?
Yes.
Mr. Harvey?
Yes.
Mr. Howard? Yes. Mr. Levenstein?
Yes.
Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Ms. Politi?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Bergarelli?
Yes.
Mr. Doré?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. That concludes my items.
Thank you. Next, item 14, Assistant Superintendent for Exceptional Learners.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Exceptional Learning Division has items 14.1 and 14.2 on a consent agenda for the board's consideration.
Would anybody like to separate out any of these items? Okay, a motion and a second then.
Second.
Any discussion on either item? Call the vote.
Mr. Harvey?
Yes.
Mr. Howard? Yes. Mr. Levenstein?
Yes.
Ms. Mineo? Yes. Ms. Politi?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Bergarelli?
Yes.
Mr. Doré?
Yes.
Mr. Grant?
Yes.
Thank you. That concludes my items.
Thank you. We will not be moving into executive session. A motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Call the vote.
Mr. Howard? Mr. Levenstein? Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Ms. Politi?
Yes.
Mr. Walker? Mr. Bergarelli?
Yes.
Mr. Doré?
Yes.
Mr. Grant?
Yes.
Mr. Harvey?
Yes.